Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I don't know if you noticed the face, but you might recognize the voice. We have Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society podcast. Paul, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's an honor to have you on here. I know I've been on your show once or twice.
Yes, sir.
And I know I met you last year at the GRPC. I don't know if you remember this. We actually talked on the phone. Not quite on the phone. I was on last year from the Minnesota State Fair. You were on with Mark Walters.
Yes, I remember that.
And I was hanging out with him. That's the first time I rode shotgun with Mark Walters. And he's like, hey, stick around, do the radio show. And then you came on the air. So that was pretty cool. All right, so Paul is with the Polite Society podcast. And this is, we can talk about the Polite Society podcast. We can talk about how you got into shooting. Let's talk a little about that. How long have you been shooting?
The first time I actually went shooting, I believe I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Awesome.
I grew up on a farm in rural South Dakota. Yeah. And there were guns all over the place. And when Dad thought I was old enough, he started introducing me to shooting.
That's cool. 5 or 6, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Rifles? Like a cricket?
Yeah. Actually, the first firearm I ever shot was a little 22 bolt action. And I've had my favorite toy, so to speak, and please everybody notice I'm using air quotes.
Yeah.
Was a pellet rifle. My dad, once he knew that I was safe, gave me a pellet rifle, and I swear I knocked down more pop cans and
nice.
And
that's free America right there.
Yeah, I spent untold hours with that thing.
That's great, man. That's great. So how did it progress after that? So you're a young boy. You got your pellet gun.
You know how it progressed, honestly, is once I became an adult. The firearms kind of went by the wayside. They weren't hugely important to me until September 11th, 2001.
I hear you. Honestly, that changed everybody.
Yeah,
it really did. For me, I was a non-gun guy. I wasn't anti-gun. I wasn't against it. I wasn't for it. It just wasn't my thing. It made sense to me, but I wasn't around it. On September 11th, everything changed for me. I was teaching at a school, and they said, hey, if anyone comes in the school that's not supposed to be here, close the door, hide under the desks. And my son was less than a year old. I'm like, that's crazy talk. I need to go home to my son. If the teachers, and I remember saying this in the teacher room, I said, if the teachers on the first floor all had guns, they could shoot the bad guys, and the teachers on the second floor can keep teaching. We only need half the whatever.
Right.
Counseling or whatever. I was being a bit facetious, but it was after that I'm like, you know what? I gotta get a gun. I got a son I need to protect, and I got a family, and I need to be able to protect them.
Right.
So that's when things started to change a little bit for you.
Yeah, and we initially got a rifle for defending the house, and moved on to and I wasn't.
What kind of rifle?
We got a old, what am I trying to say? Old Savage.
Oh, okay. Like a bolt
30 bolt action. And I've since acquired another one after selling that one, but I went on. I wasn't huge into the gun world yet. My thoughts for a handgun, which was next on the list, was, well, I don't know how well I shoot, so I'm gonna and this is going to go on the internet. I'm never going to live it down. I'm going to get a tourist judge.
You need to get out. Get out right now. I'm not even slowing down.
I got a tourist judge, and right about the time that gun rights became important to me, and then we were in danger of losing our gun rights, it became obvious that I had obviously made a very poor choice. I'd fired the thing like 3 times,
right?
But I'd made a very poor choice in guns, and I ended up selling that and selling some other things, and selling that unfortunately, that bolt action 3030, and bought a GLOCK Model 22.
There you go. That's cool.
And that was shortly after I got into podcasting. And then I found training and found out how fun it is. And the things have kind of gone from there.
That's awesome. So you got the GLOCK, you started training. You do a lot of classes with Masada Ayub. I hear you talk about those on your show, and you organize the class and have everyone pay you, and then you pay him, or? Yes. And gotcha.
Susan and I recently decided, Susan, my wife, for those who may not know me.
She's one of the other voices on the podcast.
Absolutely. We decided this year that my training had advanced enough, I can bring in people to teach basic classes. And I've done that for the last several years. But I need training beyond basic classes.
Sure.
And so we've decided for the next several years we're going to stop hosting classes, and I'm going to have to travel to get the training that I need to progress beyond where I'm at.
That's what I realize.
Generally, up till now we brought in people like Kathy Jackson, like Bob Main, Ben Branham, David Malio, and Masada Ayub. We brought them all up to the Sioux Falls area to do training.
That's cool. How do you advertise to get more people to take the class? How big is the class?
The class sizes are usually, the biggest class we've ever had was, I want to say 25 at the same time. But generally we advertise, honestly, on the podcast.
Gotcha.
And that's enough. But this year we've had some issues, and we did advertise on a terrestrial radio station to help fill classes this year.
Now, the classes you do, the Mag 20, the Mag 40, and I know some people might not know what these are, but the Mag 20 it's 20 hours of legal stuff? 20 hours,
well, there are 2 versions of the Mag 20. There's a classroom and a range.
Gotcha.
The range is 20 hours of range time. Mag 20 classroom is 20 hours of legalese. And of the 2, if you could take just one, take the classroom. That class, I'm not kidding you, either a Mag 20 classroom or a Mag 40 range will change your life.
Really?
Really.
Wow. Okay. Because Masad, for those people who don't know, Masada Ayub he's been the go-to guy in self-defense since the 1970s. That was like last century.
Yeah.
He's got a boatload of books, and if you go to Barnes & Noble and pick up, if you pick up 4 magazines, 4 gun magazines, there's a real good chance he's going to have articles in like 2 of them.
Right. He has, like you said, oodles and oodles and oodles of books. I want to say we had him sign 6 books when he came this year. He's got a ton of books out there, and everything he says is absolutely 100% rock solid, the truth. But you can go buy all his books, and you will not get what's in his class.
That's cool.
There's some things that he wants to give out only to absolutely known good people. He doesn't want the bad guys to get this information. And so the only way he can do that is to go to a class where you have to have your CCW or whatever it is called in your state.
Right.
You have to have the license that says, I've been checked out, I'm okay to carry a concealed carry,
Yeah.
And then he'll let you know that stuff.
Gotcha. That's cool. I have not taken a class with him yet. Over the since last year, I haven't been able to do it, but I'm like, you know what? I need to take something from me to up my stuff, so I'm more proficient. I'm more knowledgeable as a guy that's an instructor also. So here's how I don't want to say here's how people know you, but something happened to you a few years ago that really screwed things up.
It did.
It really did.
Well, like you mentioned, the first time we talked, that was the reason.
Yeah.
It was the day before, 2 days before Valentine's Day, about a year and a half ago. And I had a student with me. I drive truck for a living, for those of you who don't know. I had a student with me, and we were on our way to California. We were getting fuel at a little truck stop just west of Omaha. And we've only got a half an hour, so I'm going to give you the extremely truncated version. But another person made the claim to the police that I climbed out of my truck, walked around the front of my truck, and was waving a large chrome revolver in his face, screaming, "Do you want to die tonight?"
I did not know all of that.
Really?
I didn't know that. I know that from what I remember, you told him you had a gun in the back of your truck.
Right. The guy was having issues, and we had us blocked in. We couldn't move, and he was walking towards us, and he was going to climb in and honestly beat the heck out of my student. Mm-hmm. And as a last resort, I was screaming, "Dude, stop! Get back! Do not approach!" That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. As a last resort to get the guy to stop, I yelled at the guy, "Dude, I've got a gun," in my best Masada U voice at loudest volume I could.
Right.
The guy's eyes got yay big around, and he stopped and pivoted and went back to his truck and left.
So you would think...
I thought it was over. I thought, mission accomplished. I never drew the gun. The gun, I was in sweatpants, and I was in the bunk. I was going to have to drive in a few hours. And so I never, the gun never came out. It was in a drawer. It could have, but there was never a part of, the gun never came into play at all, other than me mentioning it.
Right.
And from me saying that, he called the police with this story. I got pulled over and got charged with crimes that, if I were to have been convicted, I would have spent 55 years in prison.
That's serious time, man.
That's serious.
And one of them was an act of terrorism, right?
Right. It was, the first one was terroristic threats, which was a 5-year felony, and then commission of a felony with a firearm, which is a 50-year add-on.
Wow. How is it a terrorist threat if you tell someone... It seems ridiculous. It seems completely ridiculous. Now, what should you have done?
Well, number one, as soon as I mentioned I had a gun, I should have called the police. You got to be the first person to call the police. I tell this
in classes I teach. I did this with my kids. It's the escalation of force.
Right.
And whoever tells gets to be the victim.
Yep.
And I did this a couple years ago with my kids. My son kicked my daughter under the table. She kicked him back. He kicked her harder, and then she was mad. And I said, "Sweetie, you were involved in the escalation of force. Mm-hmm. You agreed to get into a fight when you kicked him back. Mm-hmm. You're on your own." That's really what it comes down to.
Right.
And this is if you read Massad's stuff, if you take a class, he'll say after, if you have to pull a gun, even if you don't have to shoot someone, you want to call the police to be the victim.
Right.
So you can claim to be the victim, because your story turned into, "Hey man, leave us alone. I've got a gun in the truck," to he's waving it around in front of the,
Yeah. And the point I like to make out is he claimed I was waving a large chrome revolver. Now, if you've listened to a lot of self-defense stories, you know that if there's ever a threat, you focus on that gun. If somebody else has a gun and it may come into play and it's in visual range, you focus on that gun. Yeah, that's what you're looking at.
That's all the police, all the studies they've done with people who have been in lethal force situations. That's you're looking at the gun.
If this guy's story were to be true and he was focused on that large chrome revolver, how'd that turn into a rock stock black GLOCK Model 22?
It's magic.
Hey, I don't know. I guess it could be that GLOCK revolver they keep.
That GLOCK revolver they keep threatening to make.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's insane. That is insane. It really is. You had to spend a few days in jail.
I spent 5 days in jail. 4.5 days.
4.5 days in jail.
I was arrested, and when I was arrested, it was I want to say it was a Saturday. Forgive me, it's been 1.5 years ago. But when I was arrested, it was either a Friday or a Saturday evening, but the bail hearings in this particular county are every Wednesday.
Saturday to Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And that's
a long time, man.
I was going to be there no matter what.
Man, that sucks. That totally sucks. 4 days. Was it the holding cell?
It was I want to call it a dormitory type situation.
Okay.
It was one of the most unpleasant things I've ever been around in my entire life. It's there one huge 2-level. The bottom level was the living space. Top level was a sleeping space, and it was filled with all kinds of people that wound up in jail. Normally not the greatest group of people in the world.
Right.
And I didn't exactly, you don't want to, I spent those days mostly as a monk.
Oh my gosh, not talking to anybody?
No, I didn't want, the one thing the advice Mass gives that I did follow is, you don't want somebody to be in there saying, hey, I talked to that Lathrop. If you want the information on that Lathrop, give me a deal on my. And so I didn't say a word to anybody.
Wow.
And
it's a long time.
Yeah. This coming from a podcaster who loves to talk.
Right.
So, and the food was almost edible.
Almost edible. Wow.
I have diabetes, and I had, of the 3 meds I take, they gave me 1.
Oh my gosh.
Shockingly, my blood sugar started to climb.
Oh no.
And it never got dangerous by the time I was able to finally make bail. I was not feeling the greatest, but I was okay and was able to get my medications to get my sugars back down.
Wow.
So
that's insane, man. So what was the legal stuff that happened after that?
Well, it took to start with. I had to come up. They wanted, the prosecution asked for a $500,000 bond.
What?
I was not a Nebraska resident. This happened in Nebraska. I'm a South Dakota resident.
God.
I talked to the judge. I said, Your Honor, I'm fairly local. I live in Sioux Falls. I've had the same job for, at the time, 15 years. I work for the same man. I'm a 3-hour drive away. I'm not a flight risk.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge graciously dropped the bail to $20,000, which meant I could bond out for $2,000 cash, which I didn't have.
Yeah, $2,000. I mean, unless you're rolling with it, unless you're really good with money and saving and all that other sort of stuff, $2,000 is still tough to come up with.
Yeah, I am extremely blessed. And in all this, what people don't know, getting arrested is humiliating.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
And you are embarrassed, you are angry, all the negative emotions you can think of, they're in this ball in the pit of your stomach.
Mm.
And in the one phone call, then by the way, it's not a free phone call, you got to pay for it.
If you have to pay for it, how come there's only one?
Got me, but thankfully I remembered my credit card numbers.
Oh my
I'd
gosh.
memorized my credit card numbers, and I was able to just make a credit card call. to my wife. But in that first call, I was so embarrassed. I told her, sweetheart, I'll make this right somehow, but please, dear God, don't say anything. Don't tell anybody. I don't want people to know what's going on.
Right.
And I always get emotional when I do this, but my beautiful wife, Susan, is really smart. And she knew that I was in over my head and that we needed help. And she reached out to Frank Thiamingo, who used to be the president of the New Jersey Second Amendment Society. He's still a beautiful friend of mine. And together they started raising money, and thank God we got enough money raised to not only get me out of jail on bail, but we were able to pay a $10,000 retainer to the to an attorney to get started on my case.
10,000. So you need $2,000 to get out, and another 10 on top of that. So literally in a day, you're $12,000 in debt.
And that does not count time off of work. That does. There were a lot more expenses than just that, but it just. Sorry, I get emotional when I talk about this.
Holy moly!
But if I wouldn't have had my listeners, if I wouldn't have had the amazing Second Amendment community, I could still be in jail.
Wow. That's wild.
If I could throw a plug in, if you don't mind.
Please.
The Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, Marty Hayes and the gang there.
Out of Seattle.
Yes. They heard about me through a listener of mine who, the listener's thinking was that, look, he's going through this right now, and with the notoriety that's likely to come, he could be in a real mess again because people might be going after him. And so this listener bought me a membership. Marty said, we cannot help him with this thing he's going through right now.
Because you weren't a member before?
Because I wasn't a member when it happened. But he raised money for me, and he recommended the attorney in his network that we should connect with.
That's amazing.
And he said, when I talked to him, he says, I cannot help you financially, but I will help you in any other way I can, and he has.
That's incredible.
And that's the kind of man he is.
That leads to, I'm going to bring this up, that leads to the kind of people that are in the gun community. And if you listen to the news and all that stuff, you wouldn't think that, you wouldn't think that we have all of our teeth.
I do.
I have one that was extracted a long time ago, but it's in the back. You can't see it. But you wouldn't. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that gun owners aren't friendly and cooperate and don't get along. I have found the complete opposite. When I've contacted people to do interviews like this, everyone's like, "What can I do? What do you need? What can I do for you to help promote your stuff?" And it's been great. So Marty was there to help you, to do what he can.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And you guys had your podcast. You've been doing the podcast for quite a while.
A little over 4 years, about 4.5 years.
4 years. Wow, that's cool. Very cool. And it's a great podcast. You guys have a lot of people on there. And what I think is pretty wild is you guys have a lot of people from a lot of different areas.
Well, where that came from, not just the geographics. The geographics are a happy accident. I found when I started adding people to my show that we ended up having these amazing conversations because everybody's got a different perspective. For example, I've got two people on my show that absolutely love the 1911. I'm not a 1911 fan.
Yeah.
I like GLOCKs. But we have respectful conversations when we have a difference of opinion. And I enjoy the give and take. I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy exploring the topics. And apparently it's fairly rare for people to have respectful conversations on the media anymore.
Right? It is kind of rare. It's great stuff. How can, we got to wrap things up here. How can people find the Polite Society Podcast?
Go to politesocietypodcast.com or any search you do, wherever you get your stuff. If you enter Polite Society Podcast in a search, will pop right up.
Awesome. And what else do you guys have? A Facebook page?
We have Facebook page at Polite, just search again, Facebook Polite Society Podcast. We're on Twitter, but I don't use it. I don't
get how Twitter works. My Facebook stuff goes to Twitter. I don't get how it works.
Yeah, I don't use it.
Twitter seems to be a place where a lot of people argue. Personally, I'm divorced. I'm done with arguing with people, so I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter.
Yeah. I enjoy, and it's not, I enjoy discussions. I do not like arguments.
I hear you.
And so Facebook, it just seems to be the place where you can discuss most readily.
Usually it's a decent discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes not so much, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You know, some cool stuff that these guys do at the Polite Society Podcast is sometimes they do Facebook Lives of their podcast, which is pretty cool. And you guys do all your interviews and connect with all the people through Skype, right?
Right. We're looking into some other options, but Skype has worked for us so well for so long that it's kind of tough to move away from. But yeah, we do every episode when we record it. We just pop it up on Facebook Live. Now, warning, you get the sausage. You get to see the sausage getting made. It's all the goof ups, all the stuff that gets edited out of the main feed when you pick up our show on podcast.
Cool.
It's there. And we also, the thing we do that I'm the most proud of is we broadcast Gun Rights Policy Conference every year, which is why I'm here this weekend.
Awesome. All right, so listen, if you guys do not check out the Polite Society Podcast, you certainly need to. I got to tell you, it was nice to spend time hanging out with you.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we hear you on the podcast talking about all the other stuff, but I don't know if people get a chance to hear what your story is and how you got to how to go through all that crap.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's great that you had people that were supportive and encouraging and help you get through it. And this has been a lot of fun, man. I look forward to doing it again.
It's been a blast, and we're going to get my truck up to your area, and we'll go riding shotgun with Charlie again.
Truck.
But you're going to be shotgun this time.
Awesome. I that was literally when a year ago, I'm like, all right, so this guy Paul's a trucker. He's going to let me drive the truck. I got to put the cameras in the truck, and he's going to let me drive this. And you're like, yeah, I can't do that.
No. Crap. Insurance will not allow it, man.
We don't have to tell them.
It goes on YouTube, dude. Well, you guys will keep it secret, right?
Yeah. We'll black out our eyes. It'll be fine. Listen, you guys, check out Paul Lathrop and the Polite Society Podcast. Paul, thank you very much. It's been an honor to have you. Thanks for Riding Shotgun. You guys need to check out all the Riding Shotgun stuff on Facebook and on iTunes. I got the Google Play. If you're not an iTunes person, that's okay too. So I hope you guys check it out and subscribe, and we will talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot.